Hi, this is Dave and welcome to the Table, a series of videos where I review and discuss various board and card games, looking at them from a family perspective. Today we're going to be taking a look at Galapagos, the evolutionary tabletop game from Wolfgang and Sons. Now this is a 2 to 3 player area control and set collection game set in a rainforest ecosystem where you control your own species of herbivores and carnivores fighting for survival in a limited space. Now you're going to harvest genetic material and be able to adapt, fighting to be the strongest species to win the game. All right, let's take a look at Galapagos, how it's played, and I'll come back and I'll give you my thoughts. Okay, let's take a look at the components that come in Galapagos. And first, right here, we have the tiles that are going to make up the game board, which is a rainforest ecosystem. So first thing we have are these canopy tiles here. We have some understory tiles here, and we have floor tiles here that are going to make up the game board. It's a modular board, so you can make this however you want. That's why they're hex shaped. Next, we have 15 herbivore cards and 15 carnivore cards, and these are going to be the creatures that are going to be played. And there are 5 of each type. For the herbivores, we've got a turtle, we have a bird, and we have a butterfly. So there's 5 of each for those type here. And then for the carnivores, we have a spider, we have a frog, and we have a chameleon. So those make up the 3 types of cards here. Next, we have this large stack of cards here, which makes up the genes, which we'll be harvesting through the game. And as you can see, there's a bunch of different types here that make up the genetic material, which we'll be harvesting through the game. Next, there is a number of cards here, and they're stacked, and they are adaptations and mutations here, which will affect your creatures throughout the game. We want to harvest some of these genetic material in order to buy these particular cards. Next, we have some 6-sided dice here, and we have these handy little clips here that you can use to attach your adaptations to your creature cards. Okay, those are the components. Let me get the game set up and I will show you how to play. Okay, I've gone ahead and I have set up the game board here for 2 players. I have set up the game board, just made a random tile arrangement here, but I did follow the rules for the game setup, meaning that there has to be at least 1 canopy tile, at least 3 understory tiles, and then 1 floor tile for each number of players. So I have done that, and I could arrange this board however I want, but I just chose to set it up like this. Next, each player will choose an herbivore creature type and will place it on one of the floor tiles to start off with. So the player over here will be playing the turtle, and so we'll place that here. And the player over here is playing the bird, and will get placed here. Next, each player was dealt 1 of each of the genetic types here. We've got cytosine, guanine, thymine, and adenine, so C, G, T, and A. And so each player has been dealt those 4 cards. And then next, we need to determine the starting order. And so we do that, you just do almost like a mini game. You take 1 of each of the carnivore creature types, and we'll just shuffle them up here. And what we're going to do is deal 1 to each player, here and here, and we'll reveal them, and whoever has the chameleon will be the first player, so that will be this player over here. And then we just return these to the draw pile here. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is the turn order is divided up into 3 parts. We've got the beginning, the middle, and the end. At the beginning of the turn, you are going to harvest genetic material, and the way that you harvest genetic material is going to be based on the type of tile that you are occupying. Now, as a general rule, you cannot enter this canopy section here unless you have a card that allows you to do so. And if you do, this one you would be harvesting 3 genes per creature that's on there. These understory ones would be 2, and the forest floor you will harvest 1 per creature. So at the beginning of our turn we have 1 here, so what we'll do is we will draw 1 card from the gene deck, which we have a guanine, so we'll add that here. Now, on in the middle of my turn, we can do any of these particular actions. We can move any number of creatures. So our herbivores can move 2 tiles, and if we had a carnivore out, he would be able to move 3. I could buy mutations up here, and each one has a different cost. For example, right here, I have the genetic material to purchase this one here, which would allow me to harvest more, because if we look at the cost here, we need to have 2 guanines and a thymine, so we would be able to purchase this adaptation for our creature if we wanted to. And there's a few other things that we can do, or we could propagate, meaning we could create another creature, and what we'd need to do in order to do that is we'd have to have 2 of each type in order to propagate. So I think what I will be able to do, we can probably choose to do a couple different things, but I'm going to choose to stay right here, and I am going to purchase an adaptation for this guy right here. So I will spend these 2 guanine and the thymine, and I'll put them in a discard pile off to the side here. It's probably off camera that you can't see, and I will purchase this card here. And now what I will do is I will attach this with one of these clips to my creature card. So right now I have the ability now, whenever it comes to harvest, I will harvest 1 additional genetic material. So I now have that on my turn. Okay. Now, one note about these adaptation cards here: these have been, according to the rules, have been specifically arranged so that the weakest of the adaptation is on the top, and the better cards go on further down in each stack. There's like 3 for each adaptation, but there are some random mutations that you can purchase as well, and those random mutations you can purchase for 1 of each creature type, and you're not really sure what you're going to get. Now, when we do move, if we end up moving on to another card here where we ended up being the same creature type, at the end of the turn there would be a clash if possible. And what we would do is we would use any adaptation modifications to that would add to any kind of combat or clash abilities, and then we would each roll a die, and whoever had the higher ability or higher number would be victorious, and that other creature would die and lose its any adaptations that it had would also die with it. Now, if you are to propagate and you start adding carnivores, when a carnivore is on the board, it needs to end its turn on an herbivore in order for it to stay alive. If it ends its turn and it's not on an herbivore, then the carnivore will die, because it needs to be on an herbivore in order to continue to subsist. So just a couple rules about how that goes. So anyway, so those are the turn order. Let me continue to play this here. This particular one will harvest over here, and we will get another C. And this one, I believe we will go ahead and move 1, 2, and let's see if we can try to take this one out in the beginning of the turn right here. We have a 3, and this one rolls a 1, and I in fact would end up losing the battle. Now, this was an early on move to kind of show you what would happen here, and this was kind of a dumb move because we want to be able to survive and have the most species in this particular forest system. And what happened is I ended up dying in the clash, and the player over here ended up being the sole survivor and would win the game. So you're going to have to use more strategy here to kind of propagate creatures and get some adaptations that are going to give you better abilities, and you're going to want to try to gain an advantage for you to be dominant and being able to survive over the other players' creatures that are in this ecosystem. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a flavor as to how this game is played. Like I said, again, you'd be able to add on, you could add multiple adaptations to these creatures, giving them more powers. You'd be able to harvest more genetic materials here. So there is quite a bit of strategy in this game to help you to have the most prolific species in the rainforest ecosystem. And so that is Galapagos. Okay, let's talk about Galapagos here, and the tagline for this game is "It's time to get squishy." And you start getting squishy with the artwork. And if you look here at the game box, and then if you also saw on the cards here, you kind of have this like watercolor-esque and gradient hues of colors. It's not consistent, so it makes it look kind of like water had run over it, and just gives it this really, really cool look. And so it lends to that squishy, wet feel. And also the artwork on the cards themselves, the font and the sketches, just give it really this earthy feel. So it just kind of lends to the overall theme. Now, getting into the gameplay here gets squishy even more, because now you're dealing with you're going to be dealing with adaptations and genetic mutations on your creatures, and you also have those clashes where you're going to have creatures fighting against each other. And so it just kind of lends into all of that. Now, looking at the gameplay mechanics, this game is primarily a set collection game where you're going to be harvesting genetic material, and you're going to be collecting it in specific ways in order to spend it to propagate, to basically expand your creature species, or you're going to spend it to buy adaptations and mutations to your creatures that you already have on the game board. So primarily as a set collection. Now the game does have kind of a couple of elements where there's influences of other game mechanic types. There's an influence of your area control, and that's specifically when you move your creatures onto the space occupied by another creature to engage in a clash. Because if there's only one creature from your opponent on there and you move on to there, the sole survivor is going to now occupy that space. And there's some strategy in that, which I will get to in a moment. And then the other influence or touch of would be like worker placement. Now, this is not a worker placement game. However, when you move your creatures, depending on where you end your movement at the beginning of your next turn, if your creature is still there, it's going to determine how much genetic material you're going to harvest. So essentially, it's like if you place your card here, on the next turn you're going to be harvesting, depending on where you're at, you're going to be harvesting additional genetic material. If you're in an understory tile, you'll be getting 2 opposed to 1 if you're on the forest floor. And if you have the ability to enter the canopy, you would be harvesting 3. Now, of course, if you have additional adaptations added, you'll be harvesting even more genetic material. Now, a couple of strategies in this game that I note. Number 1, you're going to want to try to buy adaptations quickly and get at least something that's going to allow you to harvest more genetic material right away. This is going to help you to quickly accelerate the amount of genetic material that you have to work with to quickly propagate and further adapt and mutate your species. So I found that to be one of the keys in this game. Now, strategy comes in with the relationship that you have between your herbivores and carnivores. When you start introducing carnivores into the game, they need to be placed on top of an herbivore card in order to survive, because they are essentially eating the herbivores, and the cards don't go away, they just exist together. Now, this is where it gets interesting. When you choose, if you have a carnivore that is on top of your herbivore and you move your herbivore around, the carnivore is along for the ride. So you can kind of move your herbivore first, and then you can try to move your carnivore onto another space. And it can go on top of one of your opponent's cards as well. However, when they start moving them around, it's going to have an effect on where your carnivore is going to end up. So you're going to have some control of moving your creatures around. However, if you have a carnivore ending up on another player's herbivore, then they're going to be moving them around, so you won't have as much control. Now, the real strategy comes in that if you are to engage in a clash with another player's creature, you can essentially end up dumping off one of your cards, or if they have a carnivore on there and you go in and lose, now you can move their carnivore around. So there's some strategy in essentially moving some of your opponent's cards around the board. So it's definitely something that you have to see and play and experience. I did not get into that in the gameplay just for time's sake. Now, in the gameplay, one of the things that I did, which was really stupid, was I ended the game early because I wanted to show you how one of the victory conditions, and that was to you wanted to be the sole survivor in the canopy floor. And so I do not recommend engaging in a clash early on. The main thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to harvest a lot of genetic material, and you're going to want to have a number of creatures on the board with a number of adaptations in order to survive the dangers of being in the rainforest. Okay, now looking at this game from a family perspective, there are a few things that I specifically want to talk about. Number one, the main thing that comes through in this particular game, aside from the mechanics, is this game really shows you the fragility of an ecosystem, particularly in the rainforest here. There is a dependent relationship that each of the creatures have upon their surroundings. The carnivores need to be with the herbivores in order to survive, and the herbivores are relying on the forest ecosystem in order for them to survive. And so you see this relationship and how fragile an ecosystem is. And so looking at it from a conservation standpoint, it brings awareness to that. And so one of the things that needs to be brought to the forefront, a little more awareness, is how we treat our natural resources, and if we start depleting them, that we also have a direct effect on the ecosystems that go with them. So that could lead to potential species extinction. So this game kind of brings that to light, whether it was intentional or unintentional. That is what came out very, very clearly in this game. So if you are a conservation-minded person, this could be a really cool game that you could use to bring that about and bring it to the forefront and give a practical application. Now, this game also develops some skills during the gameplay that are also going to be relevant to real life, and that's going to be how you manage your resources and working with what you have, and then making decisions. Again, when in this game, some of your primary decisions are going to be how to spend your money. Are you going to use it to propagate and have additional creatures, or are you going to mutate and adapt the creatures that you have? So it's going to be a decision of how you're going to manage your resources. So those are the primary things that come through in this game. I really, really enjoy Galapagos. This is something that it just plays very, very quickly. Another aspect of this game that will add to a lot of replayability is the fact that it is a modular board. You can set it up however you want, and you could go ahead and add more tiles if you want to. Now, if I had put all of the tiles out, we would have a larger working space to play this game in, and so the outcome would be that the game would last longer. Now, this game is for 2 to 3 players, and it plays well with either 2 or 3. Now, if you choose to play with 4 players, what you would do is you would play in teams of 2. So, and then what you could do essentially is once there starts to be more creatures on the board, you can have, as teammates, you can split up, and one controls one type, one controls the other. The game has quite a bit of strategy in there, again, about how you're moving your creatures around the board, how you're managing your resources, and fighting for survival in the rainforest system, and that is Galapagos. Okay, and I will have ordering information in the video description below if you are interested in adding a copy of this to your library. All right, that's it for now, and join me again next time as we take a look at another game and we see how it makes it to the table.